There are moments in history when the tectonic plates of global power shift so dramatically, they send tremors through the very foundations of international relations. Moments when the old guard, clinging to the vestiges of a bygone era, suddenly finds itself confronted by a new, unyielding force. One such moment arrived in the summer of 1956, a flashpoint that would forever alter the course of the 20th century. In July of that year, the world watched, stunned, as Egyptian leader Gamal Abdel Nasser declared the nationalization of the Suez Canal, a waterway that had long symbolized European dominance over a vital artery of global commerce. It was a move that not only surprised the world, but also triggered a crisis that brutally exposed the fading limits of old imperial power. For decades, the Suez Canal, a man-made marvel connecting the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, had been more than just a shipping lane. It was a symbol, a lifeline, and a source of immense revenue, largely controlled by British and French interests. Its very existence was a testament to 19th-century European engineering and, more importantly, European influence. But the world of 1956 was a different place. The echoes of two world wars still resonated, and the tide of decolonization was rising, sweeping across Africa and Asia. Gamal Abdel Nasser, a charismatic and fiercely nationalistic leader, understood this shift better than most. He envisioned an Egypt free from the shackles of foreign control, a beacon of Arab pride and independence. His decision to nationalize the canal was not merely an economic maneuver. It was a declaration of sovereignty, a defiant roar against the lingering shadows of colonialism. He sought to finance ambitious development projects for his nation, to assert Egypt's rightful place on the global stage, and to project a powerful image of pan-Arab leadership. This audacious move, however, was a direct challenge to the established order, particularly infuriating Britain and France, who saw their economic interests, strategic access, and indeed their very prestige threatened by Nasser's bold stroke. The reaction from London and Paris was swift and, behind closed doors, venomous. To them, Nasser's act was an unforgivable affront, a direct attack on their national interests, and a dangerous precedent for other former colonies. The idea of negotiating with him was, for many, unthinkable. What followed was a clandestine chapter of international intrigue, a desperate attempt to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Britain and France, still reeling from the decline of their empires, entered into a secret pact with a third equally determined party, Israel. The plan, codenamed Operation Musketeer, was a cynical masterpiece of deception. Israel would launch an invasion into the Sinai Peninsula, ostensibly to counter Egyptian aggression. This would then provide Britain and France with the perfect pretext to intervene, not as aggressors, but as peacemakers. Their stated goal, to separate the combatants and, crucially, to secure the Suez Canal, thereby reasserting their control. It was a scheme born of a bygone era, revealing old partnerships forged in the fires of imperial ambition and desperate measures to retain a rapidly diminishing global influence. The stage was set for a military intervention, cloaked in the guise of peacekeeping, but driven by a raw desire to turn back the clock. But the world of 1956 was no longer a stage where old empires could act with impunity. The global landscape had been irrevocably altered by the rise of two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, and critically, neither of these giants looked kindly upon the Anglo-French-Israeli gambit. The United States, under President Dwight D. Eisenhower, found itself in an uncomfortable position. While a staunch ally of Britain and France, Eisenhower was acutely aware of the Cold War's delicate balance. He feared that a blatant act of neo-colonial aggression would not only destabilize the Middle East, but also push newly independent nations into the Soviet orbit, severely damaging Western standing and moral authority. His administration applied immense diplomatic and economic pressure, even threatening to sell off US government holdings of British currency, which would have crippled the British economy. Across the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union, ever eager to exploit Western divisions, condemned the invasion as imperialist aggression and threatened to intervene on Egypt's behalf, even hinting at the use of nuclear weapons. This dual opposition from both sides of the Cold War divide created an unprecedented international outcry. The United Nations, still a relatively young institution, became a crucial forum for global condemnation. International pressure, coupled with the very real threat of economic collapse for Britain and the specter of a wider conflict, forced a re-evaluation of the entire operation. Despite the mounting international pressure, the military operation proceeded. On October 29, 1956, Israeli forces surged into the Sinai Peninsula, quickly overwhelming Egyptian defenses. Days later, on November 5th, Anglo-French paratroopers landed, followed by amphibious assaults, securing key positions along the canal. From a purely tactical standpoint, the military operations achieved their objectives with remarkable efficiency. The combined forces demonstrated superior firepower and strategic coordination. However, these tactical successes were overshadowed and ultimately rendered meaningless by the overwhelming political isolation. The world had spoken, and its message was clear. This invasion was unacceptable. The gains on the battlefield were unsustainable in the face of such unified international opposition. A newly formed United Nations emergency force, the first of its kind, was swiftly deployed to the region, tasked with securing a ceasefire and overseeing the withdrawal of foreign troops. Under relentless pressure from the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Nations, Britain and France, with Israel following suit, had no choice but to withdraw their forces. The humiliation was palpable, a stark reminder that military might alone could no longer dictate global outcomes. The immediate aftermath of the Suez Crisis was a profound turning point. For Britain and France, it was a moment of stark realization, a brutal awakening to the diminished reality of their global power. Their imperial influence, once vast and unquestioned, had demonstrably waned. The crisis effectively marked the end of their roles as dominant world powers, forcing them to confront a new geopolitical order. Conversely, the United States and the Soviet Union emerged with significantly enhanced global sway, their diplomatic and economic leverage proven decisive. The crisis solidified their positions as the two poles of the Cold War world. For Gamal Abdel Nasser, the outcome was a resounding triumph. Despite the military setbacks, his political gamble had paid off handsomely. He emerged from the crisis not as a defeated leader, but as a hero in the Arab world, a symbol of defiance against Western imperialism and a powerful voice for pan-Arab nationalism. His standing soared, and his vision for a unified Arab identity gained immense momentum. Perhaps most significantly, the Suez Crisis accelerated the already burgeoning process of decolonization across Africa and Asia. It sent an unmistakable message to aspiring nations that even against formidable former colonial powers, independence could be asserted and maintained, especially with the backing of a shifting international consensus. The Suez Crisis of 1956 stands as a monumental lesson in the annals of international relations. It showed, with stark clarity, that military force, no matter how tactically successful, could not succeed without diplomatic support and international legitimacy. The old rules of engagement had been rewritten. Power had become multidimensional, no longer solely residing in battleships and battalions. Public opinion, economic ties, and the burgeoning influence of international institutions like the United Nations had reshaped the very outcomes of global conflicts. It was a moment when the world collectively decided that the era of unilateral imperial intervention was over, paving the way for a more complex, interconnected, and often unpredictable international system. The Suez Crisis was not just a conflict over a canal. It was a crucible where the future of global power was forged, leaving behind the remnants of an old world and ushering in the dawn of a new one.